A very good afternoon in rainy Harare. Here in Friday Drinks, we're back in the studio. We're back in Harare. We had a very enjoyable tour out in the UK, and we met a number of you. And the marketplace, the Sawira marketplace, is going on. But we're back in Harare, and feels good to be back home. And Rivara, thoughts on our whirlwind tour in the UK and some of the discussions that we actually shared with people and coming back home? How does it feel?
Yeah, it was. We had a fantastic time. I think we had very interesting conversations. I think over and above the conversations, I actually think the Sawira Marketplace platform is quite interesting in and of itself. I think there's scope to actually build a great business around it. It's an entry point for entrepreneurs and businesses here in Zimbabwe to access that bigger market. But also, just being away, being in a totally different part of the world, and meeting new people, and
And what gives you seem to be we've all been dressed to be Pantsula dancers. What gives?
We are looking hip and funky.
What gives?
They're trying to shave 10 years from our ages.
Yeah. Look, I mean, that just shows the progress that we've made as a show, that we are now having this tremendous corporate support. So our friends at the Coca-Cola company are the sponsors of today's episode. So as you can see, the red, the white, and the black are the distinct colors of the Coca-Cola. And today we are actually having the classic Coke, the original, with the original taste. So look, it's good.
Is this the one with the Coke?
No, they stopped. They started removing the cocaine from Coca-Cola more than 100 years ago.
Okay. So the original taste. So this is what, circa 1950s, or when was
That's
the
the
original
original
taste?
formula. Well, yeah. Geez, I must say that I'm not particularly knowledgeable about that. But there was a controversy about 30 years ago when they actually changed the formula, the recipe rather, and the market was very unhappy about it, and they had to make a very loud comeback with this classic Coke. So it's an iconic product that is loved, and when the one time that they did actually tinker with it, the market pushed back quite hard.
I must say I'm one of the few people that actually enjoy Coke, and I have Coke a lot, and I really love and do identify with Coke. From, if you remember, Coke on Saturday. What was it called?
Coke on the Beat.
Saturday. Coke on the Beat.
Yes,
and growing up, this is an iconic product that we've had in our homes for the greater part of our lives. So I'm happy that they've.
And for some of us who grew up in the rural areas, who just see the drink from afar, and will just say, if ever I get some money, the first thing that I'll do is to buy myself a Coke. And I think at some point I'll share with you what you used to do. I mean, where I got my very first taste of Coke, it wasn't really from opening a bottle and just having a gulp. We have to be creative for us to just have that taste. So
well, tell
really
us, share the story.
No way. I wouldn't. So maybe we'll just walk away, like how it is in rural areas. So there are some beer halls. And like your kids are just curious about this drink, and they used to the returnable glass bottle, the iconic returnable glass bottle, the 300 mils with its closure at the top there, and when you put it in the refrigerator and it's like sweating. I mean, it's like there's that steamy kind of look,
ice cold,
ice cold, and we just look at it from afar. And I remember me and my friends would then move around one morning closer to the shop or to the beer or picking up those closures and just testing them.
Oh, that is hilarious.
So I would say that was my very first taste of
Coke. Was licking a bottle top.
Exactly. Just the little taste of whatever.
And how was the taste?
I don't know, but it was something that I'd never tasted before. Brilliant.
Well, thank you very much, Coke.
So I've made so much progress.
You can satiate Zia's thirst.
Who would have known that from just, licking those bottle tops, we'll just have, Coca-Cola as a friend, sponsoring all this Coke. And, I'm spoiled for choice. I don't know which one to pick.
Well, it's going to be a great Friday. Thank you very much, Coke, for this. And your experience with Coke?
Yeah, well, it's an iconic brand. I remember growing up, actually, Coke was referred to any fizzy drink, even if it wasn't an actual Coke. That's how, powerful and dominant and iconic the brand is. So that's and there's still people today who will tell you they want a Coke, and actually, what
sounds like my mother.
when they just want any fizzy drink. That's
I mean, can you hear that sound? It's a beautiful sound to behold.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And your experience, the UK, and then coming back.
So look, obviously it was a great trip, very productive. What I really liked about the trip is really how the show is actually transformed from just being, a talk show. I don't know if you would call ourselves that. We're moving from just conversations to facilitating commerce. So the way I would look at it is Friday drinks from conversations to commerce. And I think it was quite successful. We were at the center of what was happening there. The corporates, the partners that were there, and then also the people that came to the exhibition center. And there's a lot of business transactions, customers meeting businesses that they've been doing business with for a long time in Zimbabwe. And what has really excited me even more is what has happened post the trip. The number of organizations that have been calling. In fact, yesterday I got a call from a good friend of mine who is in business, and they were saying to me, Ranga, why did you leave me out of this? I want to be part of the marketplace. And I then linked them up with the Nyaradzo team. And I'm sure we also saw in one of the groups that we are in, where another organization was also wanting or putting up their hand and say they want to be part of the Sawira marketplace. So look, it's actually a movement, the way I look at it. It's a movement that is going to be it's good for the businesses, it's good for the diaspora, but it's also good for the country. In a way, it sort of solves the import problem. I mean, this import competition that businesses are facing. So if someone from diaspora sends in, for example, $100, their family has got a choice in terms of what they can buy, pretty much, right? But imagine a situation where, because of the marketplace, someone in diaspora gets to actually buy. So if they were looking for, say, a
medical
beverage,
services,
yes, they are getting the service directly from companies that are based in Zimbabwe. So,
and what I got, especially speaking to the UK diasporans in particular, that they're very patriotic about their products, about Buy Zimbabwe, they've got a very nostalgic feelings towards Zimbabwe and Zimbabwean products.
No, that's correct. There's a strong emotional connection between the Zimbabweans in the diaspora with Zim and the brands. And some of the interesting conversations I had were about, some of the luggage that folks, so some of the stuff folks had to pack in their luggage, the iconic brands that people in the diaspora love. So I think there's definitely low-hanging fruit in terms of that spend in accessible to Zimbabwean companies.
There was a hilarious story of a guy who packed Zim steak and chicken.
Yeah.
All the way to the UK. It's hilarious.
No, it's quite common. I mean, I know that within my family and friends circle, that there are times that we have had to, carry huge baggages or parcels, mostly meat. And they love
Zimbabwean steak.
the Zimbabwean steak, the Zimbabwean sausages.
Yeah. There was a great love for Qualcomm products. Whoever is listening from Qualcomm, the UK is a huge market with Qualcomm products.
Exactly. You could also say the same about one of the iconic Delta products, under Schweppes. I mean, the Mazoe orange. Yeah, they love it. So I think what's really coming out is a big lesson to the local producers or the companies is if your product is very good, you don't have to do much, right? It will just have this.
It sells itself.
It sells itself.
Yeah.
The customer loyalty is there. Even if they go, you think that when you go into the first world, you are in the UK, you're in London, right? There's a huge variety of products in a wide range of choices from any particular product. But for these guys, some of them that have been in diaspora for more than 20 years, to still say they want this particular Zimbabwean product 20 years later, some of them may not have been back in Zim for the last 5, some even 10 years. But you know what? They still want to consume a Zimbabwean product.
Yeah, that's actually phenomenal.
Not because someone forced it on them, by the way.
True. So back home, I think we got ya, and there were pleasant news, and I think the most pleasant one was, Aliko Dangote flying into Zim, and he had, a litany of other business associates, and they sat down with the president of the country and discussed a number of issues. But I think the most pertinent and critical one was the Dangote Group pledging $1 billion as an investment in Zimbabwe for a number of products. I think the critical one being cement manufacturing, but there's fertilizer there, and there's also the pipeline. But let me start off. Maybe Rufaro, you can just give us your view and your thoughts around that.
Look, I think it's great to see that kind of engagement between the government and investors. $1 billion in the context of Zimbabwe's economy is nothing to sneeze at. It's a huge amount of money. It moves the needle, and beyond the specific investments and how they'll benefit us in terms of the productivity, the employment, and it's a powerful signal to other investors, and other players who perhaps were giving Zimbabwe a miss because of the perception of inordinate risk, that's not commensurate with the likely returns. So when you see somebody of Dangote's pedigree actually come through and sign deals, it signals to the rest of the world that Zimbabwe is indeed a place where you can transact. And I think you'll start to see a lot more interest from a variety of investors from all over the world. So I think it's
So you think it was important as perhaps from the signaling perspective?
Yeah, so I think in and of itself, it's great to be signing deals for that kind of value, but to signal the rest of the world that you can actually meet senior government officials and make progress and sign deals. That's fantastic. And particularly for us in the capital markets, we always encounter a lot of skepticism and cynicism about Zimbabwe. And so one of the things that everybody in our industry will be saying when they're having that conversation with whoever in Joburg or London or New York is that, well, look, Dangote has done this deal. He signed $1 billion and he's come through. So, you should be okay to do the same thing.
Okay. So, and Ranga, so from Ruvaro's perspective, it's a good signal, but this is not the first time we've seen this particular story or signal. We've had it before. I think it was 2015 or so about 10 years ago, where again Aliko Dangote came to Zimbabwe, and they were looking at again the same investment. But I think post what happened in 2015, he then went back and he had scathing things to say. I will quote what he actually said. Well, maybe let's keep history in our past, but he was quite scathing, to say it mildly, about Zimbabwe and the conditions that prevailed then. But he's given it a second shot. So my question to you is, do you see this as beyond just a signal? What is different a decade later?
So I just have to pick up from the response that he gave, because I think he was actually asked by one of the journalists around what has changed, between in 2015 when he came first time and now. And one issue that, quite a few issues that he highlighted, he actually said he thinks now there's more transparency in the way things are done in Zimbabwe. So maybe around how an investor can bring in their money and what they can expect to get. And he also thinks that he also sees the economy itself having been sort of transformed. In fact, the word that he used was around the economy has been stabilized. So it makes sense for him to come back, and he had some very positive things to say about the president and government. And one could say maybe it's a win for the Zim is open for business mantra. But obviously, we in business, it's so this is just the first contact meeting, if I could put it that way. What we need to see is demonstrable progress on the ground, where we actually start seeing, the actual investment being deployed into the country. We know there are institutions like ZIDA who have been at the forefront trying to champion for investment, attracting investment into the country. And every now and then we see some big numbers being, publicized about these are the investments deals that have been signed. But I think, yes, it's really about now converting that from just being a memorandum of agreement, but that's basically what you got, to actual investment. And I would say...
So you're the lawyer. Maybe explain to us, when you say a memorandum of agreement was signed, what is a memorandum of agreement?
This is just, I would say it's just a preliminary agreement that simply says the parties have come to some sort of an understanding on how they need to, whether it's going on any particular issue they're dealing with. This is how they're going to be doing it. So it's really, it's not a binding document as it were, but it's just an expression of intentions.
Okay.
An expression of intentions. And what it then does is, at the back of that memorandum of agreement, then real work would then start around, okay, what exactly that we need to do. But this really captures the spirit. This is the intention that we have at the high level. And if it's put together properly, there's no reason why bureaucrats underneath would not make it fruitful, live. Because already what's clear is the principals have agreed on what needs to be done, and what left is for that agreement to then be implemented.
Okay.
And obviously it's really about it then left on the bureaucrats to be able to then translate those intentions, good intentions from their principals, into something that is tangible on the ground.
Okay, so Rufaro, from your experience in the capital markets, when you've had people signing, memorandum of agreement or memorandum of understanding, what typically then happens practically on the ground? When can we say, yay, the money is in Zim, or something is happening?
Yeah, look, so I think it's early days, and unfortunately, we have precedent where we've signed these agreements, and then they've come the whole thing then went on to come apart at the seams. So I distinctly remember, for example, we did a deal with ESA, the steel company, which was going to take over Zisco Steel. and build a steel plant there. And it was for $750 million at the time. It was during the GNU. I remember they actually
Set up offices,
set up shop, employed people, and were ready to move. And then in the end, I think the state changed its position on iron ore mineral rights, and it stopped making sense for ESA without access to the iron ore, and it came apart at the seams, and ESA exited. It's not necessarily the case that once you've signed an agreement
But
of
to
this
be
nature,
fair, one could argue that with ESA, the principal counterparty was government, whereas with the Dangote Group, the principal counterparty is themselves, actually, because they're coming in as a greenfield investor.
yeah. So look, I'm optimistic. I think based on the different tone and feedback after the two trips, you spoke to 20 to 15, and Ranga spoke to what Dangote was saying this time around. He seems very bullish. So, and I tend to err on what the actual entrepreneur business people say. So if he's bullish, and he's invested across Southern Africa,
Well, 16 countries.
so
across Africa.
he's certainly not given to hot air or false claims.
He's not a virgin in this part of the...
So he understands how to navigate sometimes choppy waters with African rules and regulations and different governments and personalities. So I'm bullish. I think this is a very strong bullish signal for Zimbabwe. And I'm delighted that we're actually talking about something like that, because normally here on a Friday, if we're frank, there's just some policy action that we're whining about.
Yeah, true.
Maybe also just to add that even the political environment, 2015 and 2025, there are some differences. So this was during the GNU era. And there was a lot of...
this is...
No, 2015 was after.
2015, it was just
After the GNU.
Yeah, it was after GNU. But I also think that maybe there was a lot of factionalism that played out. I think where I was going to mention the GNU era was around the ISA transaction that you spoke about, that it was being pushed. Then the Minister of Industry and Trade was Professor Ngube, so there was that fight between the parties that were in government. But obviously, I think one issue that he raised 2015, which I hope will be dealt with before we go for break, was around corruption. And
Okay,
I think
so on that note, maybe let's actually take a break, and you can join us in the second segment.
I was hoping just to get in a hello, but Daniel beat me to it. You know what? He caught the dub, but little did the boy know he was about to catch an L.
Dibs!
Thank you very much, and welcome back to the second segment. And as we said, we are just really looking at very good news that came into Zimbabwe this week, and that is Aliko Dangote coming actually to Zimbabwe. And what we're trying to do is just analyze and understand what this actually means. They signed a memorandum of agreement with the Zimbabwean government for a deal worth about $1 billion. And Ranga has intimated what an MOA actually entails. This is a statement of intention. So what we need to do is to get into the details and understand. And some of the issues that were raised just previously in the first segment was the issue of corruption. So what we want to do is to just have a deep dive, because I think this was an issue that was raised by Dangote himself the last time he was here. And we know that he's already in 16 countries. And we know that in Africa, we know that Africa is rife with corruption. So for him to single us out, in such a dirty word, I think reflects badly on us. But he's given us a second chance. what do you think is going to happen now? Have we cleaned ourselves out in terms of corruption?
Well, we know the answer is no, but I think there is actually an opportunity for something to be done, maybe specifically for him. So maybe I would suppose, I don't know what was discussed, but I mean, just speculating from outside and what I could possibly do if I was up there, I would say, you know what, this particular investor, it has to come through my office. So, and ensure that, look, it's not a good way of doing it, but it's because you know that
Through the president's office.
because the bureaucracy, because you're worried, if you're thinking that maybe the corruption, because remember, the corruption worries were around maybe the bureaucrats wanting some cut or whatever. But if it's if it's the ministers, then that's a big problem. But I would think it's actually good and incumbent upon all the political players to make this one work.
Okay. So that's an interesting one. Let's actually bring it to discussion because I disagree with you vehemently. I would say that it must go through ZIDA. It must go through what the law says. We must not be seen to be putting new ways of doing business.
But you went to
go
see the
directly-
president. You didn't go to see ZIDA.
Yeah. Because remember,
and he signed the MOU, I think, with the guys at the top. I hear you. It's not best practice.
Remember,
to be running things
everything
through.
that they did was really around Pompe Fanfe. That's really not the deal itself.
Okay.
Government is not the counterparty. But these are things that's why the most important person in that room was actually the ZIDA chair, because that's the person that all investors must go through.
No, you've
So
got a
my
point.
argument is they must go through our channels, because we are saying that the good parliamentarians and the good ministers have seen it fit to create a structure of how investments must happen.
Yeah.
What I would do if I were president is to just check up on whether or not things are actually happening the way we say they must happen.
And empower them.
And empower those
them,
guys,
and then give them instruction that there's no other authority.
including himself.
Yes. You have to stick to the rules, because the rules are there.
Exactly.
In terms of how you deal with, inbound investment. And where I thought maybe you could do even more, just create something, is to say, you know what, we are ring fencing this particular investor and investment and ensure that there's no red tape. So if there's red tape, then this is actually an opportunity for us to get rid of all things that could slow down the implementation of any investment into the country.
Let's hear, Rufara, how would you go about it in terms of just corruption and in terms of just the litany of rules and regulations that usually inhibit investment? I think Zia, correct me if I've taken your answer wrongly, but I think that you've come around that it's not necessarily true that it has to go through the president. There's no need for an exception.
Yeah,
Well, no, I think you guys are misreading the optics of this. So basically, because whatever investments that the Dangote Group is making in Zimbabwe, it's not like Dangote himself is going to come through and actually go through the processes at CEDA. So basically, I think this interaction is just a high level, because one of the roles of the presidency is to actually sell Zimbabwe as an investment destination. To say, look, you're the highest ranking advocate for the country as an investment destination. And so it's a very high level meeting, and they're discussing things from a bird's eye view. And then obviously when the specific investments in whether it's the fertilizer business or the cement business or whatever it is are being rolled out, then the Dangote team will send its people to go through, to dot the I's and cross the T's at ZIDA and everywhere else. So I think
So the question is, should it be in the president's office? It's not like the president himself will be handling these things.
Yeah.
So the question is, should it be in the president's office or should it be in ZIDA's office?
So this is the point that I'm trying to make here, that when the actual process happens, when the actual paperwork gets done, I'm pretty sure the Dangote team starting point will be at CEDA. But I think at a high level, just having the conversation.
Ranga is saying
Yeah.
it's also very possible for
Yeah.
the president to provide an exemption so that instead of going through ZIDA, you come directly to the president's office. And in the president's office, you get the sign off. That's what we're trying to question, yeah. And I'm saying that no, it shouldn't be. If there are any hiccups, then it's incumbent upon the president to change the law, to ensure that the law is okay. There are lots and lots of business people who do not like the fanfare. I mean, to your point, they don't want to be in front of cameras and to be handshaking with the president, but they want to invest in Zim. And they should be able, and they're probably investing more than $1 billion. And it should really be easy for them.
And I don't think from Dangote's perspective it's just pomp and fanfare. So also I think it signals, and because the last time he came, the concern that he raised was corruption, right? So one of the ways that you deter corruption is if you then have this pomp and fanfare where you have this photo op with the highest power in the land, right? It signals to everybody else in the regulatory universe that perhaps this is not, the Dangote team is not a good destination for, for your next skullduggery, right? Perhaps you should be a bit more professional.
Like we want some facilitation fee.
Because this guy clearly has
got access.
The ear of.
But what's different? Last time there was pomp and fanfare again with the president at that time, Mugabe.
Yeah, but I think
and that didn't deter.
Yeah, for sure. But I actually think that one of the differences between the founding president and the current president is that I think the current president is much more business friendly, or he's much more comfortable interacting with business people and doing transactions with them. I think Mugabe was probably more of a socialist. I think he, during the liberation struggle, he was indoctrinated by the Maoist.
I thought you were going to say the Jesuits.
No. If it was just the Jesuits, then we would have been fine from a business perspective. But unfortunately, I think it was Maoist China that was our major sponsor, and we borrowed a lot from their doctrine and ideology. And I think the current president is much more progressive.
Okay, so let's put it to Ranga. Ranga, what I'm trying to say is, what's the signal that we need to give to especially the bureaucrats or the management within the Dangote Group that actually this time it's different? What's a signal that we can give to them that immediately when they start interacting with us, they also can experience this thing that's actually different?
Maybe that, the processes, they are now laid out processes that are respected. So the point that
Zida wasn't there in
Zida
2015,
was not there,
but Zida is
there now, and we are seeing what they are doing on the ground, and so we need to be able to demonstrate that it actually works, that everything that the Zida regulations say about maybe setting up businesses, if you follow that through, you'll be able to do that without having to be oiling some hands or something like that. And
that you don't actually need any political handling whatsoever. Everything can go through Zida, and it's pretty straightforward. Maybe that's something that we can actually say it's fundamentally different this time around, which in 2015 was murky, or one could not really understand the processes. And I think that at the time also we had the indigenization rules, right? That's something else. That's different.
Absolutely. Look,
because we don't have those indigenization rules anymore. They can come up. They can actually come into Zimbabwe and set up their manufacturing plant and own it 100%.
Absolutely.
And that's go ahead.
No. Look, I think the framework is not ideal, and we've complained on the show many times about the things that we think are not working and could be done differently. But certainly, when it comes to foreign investment, so I'll start with the capital markets to begin with. We saw some reforms over the last 15 years that have made the capital markets a much safer destination for capital in terms of having custodial services separate from the people who allocate capital, the asset managers, and from us, the stockbrokers. We now have trust accounts. We don't handle clients' assets or money. So that was a very progressive and positive regulatory reform. And then the creation of ZIDA in and of itself is also another fantastic regulatory reform that basically makes life so much easier for an incoming investor to set up shop and figure out how to navigate the Zimbabwe's regulatory universe. So that's fantastic, and that certainly I've interacted with investors who've worked with ZIDA, and they've got nothing but good things to say about the experiences there. And so I think the posture in terms of facing foreign investors is very different from what it was the last time Dangote got here in 2015.
Yeah. I think that message is actually coming out very clearly. We no longer have indigenization laws. We no longer have this murky plethora of laws. It's all now centralized in ZIDA, and the process has been simplified. Maybe now let's talk to the elephant in the room. One question that would have come out, especially when you're talking to the Ministry of Finance, the RBZ, and everybody else who was in the room, is around currency, because they would have said, hey, Zimbabwe, in the last 10, 20 years, you guys have had like how many currencies? I come from Nigeria. We do have currency problems, but we still have our Naira, and we can sort of determine what should happen going forward. What's your advice? First, to the Dangote Group, how would they go around this, the issue of currency? And then second, if you're on the other side of the aisle, what sort of confidence would you give them around currency issues?
Well, so for now, they are coming at a time when the local currency is stable. Well, you can qualify how that stability means and how it came about. But it's undeniable that, even on the parallel market, whatever is there of SIG, the exchange rate has been stable at some point. And also the issue around inflation. We have got a history of hyperinflation. So where we are right now is not the most perfect one. We are saying the blended inflation could be 20%. But we are talking of a country that had inflation of more than millions and billions. So if we can sort of maintain this macroeconomic stability, at least it gives any prospective investor something to look forward to. But I think someone like on the Dangote side, really, they can't just take it at face value and expect that maybe stability is going to be there or things are going to get even better. If they can get some concessions at this point in time, they should. If we bring in money in this currency, we should be able to take it out in that currency whenever we want. So they get some I'm sure they've got a very strong legal team that can craft something together that is actually justiciable in international courts in case the Zim government decides to, not abide by.
So you're still insisting on exceptionalism?
No, well, so I've got a different take from Zia.
Yes.
Yeah.
How
would you go about it? So the simple question is, if I'm Dangote, I'm putting in $1 billion, and I want to be able to take out my dividends and everything else that I have put in, and it should be simple and straightforward, like it is in the other 16 countries.
So that's actually not the case, that it's simple and straightforward, right? If you look at Nigeria, where he's based, Nigeria has had currency issues for the longest time. People have struggled to ship their money out of that country from time to time, and business people are nothing if not dynamic, and so they figured it out, and people still do business in Nigeria and make a lot of money. And
Nigeria didn't have hyperinflation, so the difference.
Okay,
I don't think anyone would have a problem with blocked funds that are in US dollars and have remained in US dollars in that currency over the period. So even if it's 5-6 years, it has happened in Ethiopia. It happens right across the world. But the currency doesn't change. The problem with Zim
for sure.
is the currency then changes.
Hyperinflation is incredibly corrosive and destructive. And there are businesses that actually survived hyperinflation in Zimbabwe, and arguably because they had to figure out how to resolve currency issues, they expanded into non-core areas, and today they are much bigger businesses than they were before the 2 bouts of hyperinflation that we've witnessed. So, in as much, and I'm not making a case for being nonchalant about the risk of hyperinflation. It would be terrible if it happened again. But I think that the point I want to make is you can figure it out if it does happen, especially if you've got a fertilizer plant.
Is that what you're going to give the?
No.
Is that your advice to
no, that's
a
not
potential investor?
So I think, but I'm just speaking about a potential worst case scenario, right? And I'm not saying that we are well and truly past hyperinflation and it's never going to happen again. I'm not making that case, but I think that the probability is significantly lower.
No, I think, okay, gentlemen, I think Rufaro was on. He started correct, but I don't know what then happened. But I think you were onto something. That your advice to the Dangote Group is diversify your income streams. While it is well and good to have incomes that are directly in the currency of choice or whatever in the domestic market, and this will be Zimbabwe, but it's also very good and important to diversify, to have a product, even though it's coming out of Zimbabwe, but it's exportable, so that you have diversified your income streams and you don't have problems around currency.
Yeah, but also what is
given one in time.
also,
I think that's I thought that's where you were going with this.
The other
I
point I was
still
going to
think
make,
that they have to push for concessions because we'll certainly have another bout of hyperinflation.
No.
We'll have currency issues.
We'll come to you, Zia.
Okay.
But I wanted to let's have this line of thinking. Do you think that that's the best way you're going about it, to diversify your revenue streams?
Well, look, the way I look at it is if you're building a fertilizer plant, if you're building a cement plant, you're basically producing, physical goods that are, their nature is non-monetary, right? So technically, as long as you are conservative about protecting your balance sheet and pricing, you should be able to survive a bout of hyperinflation.
So many companies didn't survive, but let's take a break and we'll take this up with Zia in the next segment. Join us. Cheers.
I was hoping just to get in a hello, but Daniel beat me to it. You know what? He caught the dub, but little did the boy know he was about to catch an L.
Dibs!
Welcome back. Interesting discussions that we're having. A very important one because we actually have a live case study, and this is the Dangote Group that is looking at investing in Zimbabwe, and we've had interesting discussions around what should they do, and we were just having a good discussion here with Rufaro around should they diversify their income streams or not. And I think that his last argument was not necessarily so, because as long as you're producing actual goods, then you're okay. And I think my argument is there were lots of people who were producing actual goods, but because of the pricing distortions and hyperinflation, they couldn't. So my argument is ensure that you've diversified your income stream. Let's now take it to Zia, because Zia has all sorts of ideas and all sorts of risks that are prevalent, and how best the Dangote Group could get around those. Maybe you can explain to us.
The group has got experience in investing in Africa. And with around 20 billion US dollars of wealth, this is a powerful man that can really get concessions, especially from countries like Zimbabwe that are desperate for investment. So I don't think they'll fool themselves to think that they'll have control over the macros. So you are coming into Africa, you have to take the risk as it is, that you'd have some macro issues along the way. But obviously you are coming because you are seeing potential in one form or another. So I think the reason for actually coming directly to the president or to the highest office in the land, besides the pomp and fanfare, it's also to really get some commitment at the high level. And I would advise them to say, you know what, just assume that things could go wrong and make sure that you've got some protection. You've got, what has happened to the other investors before you could easily happen to you as well. So you maybe ask yourself, what can we learn from all the other businesses that have tried to operate in Zimbabwe? Why did they have to leave? And then try to protect yourself. And I think the good thing about them is that it's a Pan-African business, although it has now gone out of Africa. They understand Africa very well. And I think where Shumba was going with the issue, I don't know whether it was him or you, with the issue of the diversification. I would say, in addition to that, you also have to understand that markets like Zim, they're actually currency plays. So you are coming here, you are putting in brick and mortar, you start producing cement, fertilizer. A lot will happen in the current space. I think you have to be alive to that. What I've seen with quite a number of foreign businesses or international businesses is they come here with a template that says, I can only do this. And then when we start doing our, shenanigans with the currencies, they are left holding something that over time becomes nothing. So I think the diversification, as you'd put it, is you have done very well and you see that you are struggling to move funds around. But maybe there are opportunities for you to be picking up some assets that may be non-core for you. You have to be nimble and be able to play the part. And if you look around some of the successful businesses that we have had in Zimbabwe, they have really been about someone being able to say, you know what, do I have to just, with this problem where you can't ship money out, but those funds still have got.
I think Ranga, you raise important questions, and I want to hear what Trufara has to say. The critical one that you raise is Zimbabwe, for the most part, is a currency play, and unfortunately, it's only locals who know how to play the currency play.
I'll push back on this idea that it's only locals who understand how to.
Maybe you can start with: do we have foreign businesses that know how to play the currency play? Because a lot of the foreigners that have invested in Zimbabwe are in export businesses. The ones that came directly closed down. A lot of them then shipped out.
So I actually have a fantastic case study to use for my pushback, which is, so Barclays was in Zimbabwe for more than 100 years, and they obviously got to a point where it was too hard for them, and they exited. And I remember at the time when FCB entered the Zimbabwean market, I was actually quite skeptical about their chances of succeeding, because I figured, look, Barclays is an international brand. There are customers who are there because they want to be part of, because of the, the name, and its multinational nature, right? So I thought they were going to struggle. But they came in, they rebranded, and they have been very competitive in the local market. In the first 6 months of this year alone, they've paid a dividend of 13.4 million. They've done incredibly well. Navigating.
What do you think is their critical success?
This, and actually, the banking sector in Zim, if you look at it at a high level, it's shrinking. The formal sector is suffering. It's a very tough space to make money, and they figured it out. And my best guess is, the group that owns FCB, it's also in Zambia, it's in Malawi, which has had currency issues, it's had regulatory challenges of the sort that we've experienced in Zimbabwe. They are also in Botswana, so they understand.
So I would say that Rufaro, FCB is a very good example, but it's just one example.
Yeah, so
we have a lot more.
So what I'm saying,
and I would say that the critical element was local management, because actually the people who are running FCB are still locals who actually understand the local environment and how to navigate the local environment. But that's a very good case study that you've given us. But that's one. Which others? Because what we see are a litany of companies.
So I'm not really a big fan of anecdotes. The reason why, but sometimes they're useful to make the point of, how do you navigate? And you actually called it correctly. They've got a local management team with their finger on the pulse that understand how the Zimbabwean market works. And I think that's obviously
So that's advice directly to the Dangote Group.
Yeah, so-
that they're probably best placed having people on the ground who
that
actually
understand the market,
the market.
And I think their experience in 16 other African markets would have, I would have taught them that, right? That these places can, be very choppy waters. The rules can change. So you need to have people on the ground who, with fingers on the pulse, who give you
I actually think
timely
that,
insights.
I think that that's a very good insight, which dovetails with even the export counters or the export businesses that have done well, that are owned by foreigners, that have done well in Zimbabwe, is that typically the management team is Zimbabwean. So whether you're talking about Zimplats, you're talking about Unki, you're talking about your big mines, Caledonia, and a number of them, is that the local management team is the management teams tend to be local, and perhaps that's a better way of navigating the choppy waters. So that's a good one.
Local and empowered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
In the sense that the holding company has to empower the local managers to do things within a certain sort of framework, where if they feel that the balance sheet is under threat, they do something to protect it, and acknowledge that maybe Zim is not a typical textbook economy as it were. There are certain things that you have to do because there's so much policy inconsistency. Sometimes there are things that paths that we take that are so detrimental of any business activity. And what you need is a very nimble management team. But not also that you also need a team that is very, I think that has got, that understand the politics. So they should be able to engage. They should be able to, sit down with people, policymakers, and be able to get some concession, push some hard
Dia is
bargains.
pushing out this exceptionalism.
Yes.
That management by exception.
Look, I'm advising Dangote, by the way. I don't care about the other client. If the other client comes, I also give them a specific advice to them. But the reason why I'm pushing for exceptions is you'll never have a level playing field in a market like Zimbabwe. It's tilted against you from day one. So it's actually incumbent upon you to actually go up there and start to get it
Okay, that's a very good point. So the good point there is you need to actually anticipate the changes, to know what's going to happen, and to get where your exceptionalism, and it's a point that I must concede is true, is if we look at legacy debt, the foreigners that got their money paid out, and they're still foreigners 10 years on whose money is still stuck in Zim. And the difference is someone was just good at PR and someone was not.
And it's actually very sad. Once upon a time, where the client that we're advising, that almost $30 million stuck in Zim. At that point, we were in US dollars that was beginning to lose value. And remember, we used to talk in terms of the premium.
1-to-1 gauge.
Yeah. And we were saying to them, look, this is Zimbabwe. You have to if you have to get out your money, do it now. Yes.
Or buy a non-monetary asset that's
Exactly.
going to store value.
Exactly.
Because
If you
the money that your bank balance is going to evaporate. And they just couldn't wrap.
Well, they couldn't get, I imagine, they couldn't get approval because, you can't tell a guy who's manufacturing cement, for example, and you say go into another asset that is not in your line of business. I mean, to get head office.
To sign off
that.
Get some guy in Dubai or
But-
London
but
or
whichever
whatever.
head
to sign
of-
off.
Understand.
But we
But
literally
whichever-
watched $30 million evaporate.
Yes, but whichever head office that signs off for money to come into Zim, they should know how Zim operates. This is not California, it's not London, it's not like even Joburg. So, we actually watched that 30 million. I remember this guy was a professional colleague, a CFA shareholder like me. And they're like, Ranga, I'm going back. I failed. My principals have said I should come back because the 30 million is now, maybe at that point it was like 10 million. Like my friend, at that point, the worst that could have happened, they were going to give away maybe 3 million. and get their 27 million outside the country because this was their money. It's not like they were trying to do any funny things. And so the reason why I'm saying it's a currency play, a local would see that. So because they can't ship out money, they may actually start buying, property, other businesses. And remember, there was a time when even the likes of Deltas were buying Ariston and whatever. Why? Because they say, we want the currency in there. So you have that. You need to have that.
But so I
it's
think
important
this is an
to be
impo-
diversified.
I think also we should not miss this opportunity to make the case that we're actually so much better off as a country if we just jettison exchange control, and we stop having these conversations about hyperinflation. We will always be worse off if we have hyperinflation again.
Yeah. I think Zia came up with a good way of looking at it is, yes, right now we have some sort of stability. Yes, the government has said they will give us stability for the next however many years, but we're saying that our past, we cannot hide away from our past. So if the worst should happen, and the Dangote Group are best advised to work with all possibilities that could potentially happen.
Of course.
So I think that the advice has been very good. Diversify your income streams from day one, and just understand that Zim is different from everybody else. So if your income streams are diversified, you're far better off. Have a strong management team with a lot of leeway. Because they actually understand the nuances of Zimbabwe. And what's critical is actually understanding that in all the African countries that they've been to, none of them have really suffered hyperinflation unless they're in the DRC. I don't know if they're in the DRC, but none of those countries have suffered hyperinflation. So Zim is unique in that sense that there is this trauma and there's this backdrop that there is hyperinflation, and you need to navigate that. And only the local management is best placed to navigate that. And then the other thing that Zia has highlighted, which, have been pushing back hard on, but I think they are very good examples of this exceptionalism where it actually does work, is you need to be very close to the political class because there are these realities that, legacy debts, some have got their legacy debts paid off, not because they were corrupt in any way, but it's just because that they understood proximity to power. They understood where the market was going and what was actually happening with the market. Some picked up the TBs early on. So when government said, okay, we're issuing TBs, there were those who said, okay, let's have those TBs, and they traded those TBs quite quickly. And then there were those who said, no, we don't want TBs. We want our money. Because that's what head office was saying. Head office was just purely saying, we want our money. 10 years later,
They haven't been paid.
they haven't been paid. And then the other highlight that you picked up on, which I think was a good one, using FCB, is that they came in and they have actually done very well. But the other thing that they've been doing is being very aggressive with the dividend. So whatever money you put in, you're far better off being aggressive with the dividend so that you get your money back quite quickly.
You actually reduce your payback time.
You reduce
so
your
that,
payback
what
time.
happens later,
You're not too
escalate.
phased, and you allow the business to grow. Anything else that you guys or you gentlemen would want to speak directly? Maybe now let's speak directly to the policymakers. That this is a very good opportunity that we have. What could the policymakers do to make the issues simpler? I think we've already highlighted that, empower Zida. Let Zida lead the way. What else before we conclude?
Maybe I'll just, it's an issue, obviously, as capital market players. It's probably, this is to Dangote before we jump to the policymakers. Okay. The International Financial Center, which they are setting up in the Vic Falls, I would say that's the platform that they may need to take advantage of. And look, it's $1 billion. So this platform is created to protect international investment, and the exchange control regime there is much less onerous around how you can move in and out, the capital and the dividends, repatriation and things like that. So I would say, on day one of that exceptionalism, just say, we are the first guys here and we can bring up to $1 billion. Let's test how this thing works. You don't ask us questions. We can be moving money in and out whenever we want. And to the policymakers, it's actually a very good way of actually launching it. where you've got a big player. I mean, this is, and just look at the spaces that they intend to play in. Fertilizer. I mean, we've got this whole agricultural revolution that we want to do post land reform, and fertilizer has been a big pain point for some of us who are farmers. You know, cement. I don't know if you guys would know that there's a serious shortage of cement as we speak. I was doing some small project only to be told that prices had gone up by 40-50%. So they're going to be playing in that kind of space. The sugar space, obviously, alongside the other players who are already there. And one thing that he spoke about was utilizing the pipeline. Once
a new pipeline.
A new pipeline once and be able to move product from Nigeria, from their refinery. What that would mean in terms of the fuel situation and the pricing and etc. So they are playing in these very critical spaces that I think as a country, as we are trying to anchor the economic progress of this country, you need to have a player with muscles. And that's a big thing that they're going to be bringing in on board. When you're speaking to corporates, they're always telling you about, we don't have capital for retooling, we can't access international capital. And, having a player like Dangote, I mean, with what we've seen with Econet, why they've been able to thrive in Zimbabwe is because of Strive. He has got access to international capital markets. So he's able to actually go out there and be raising money for Econet while as Zimbabwe. Dangote could do that maybe 2-3 times better. So you let him come through, and obviously the signaling effect. He's here, he has set up something and is thriving. If someone is asking you, okay,
so you're saying take advantage.
Take advantage
of this, and then,
give him whatever he wants.
I mean, he was in Zambia and he was complaining about electricity shortages. Let's just solve our electricity.
Let's do that.
He's already highlighted what his issues are.
Listen to him. In fact, when he speaks, take notes. You can't be lecturing him. He's a multi-billionaire. Take notes. Everyone who is there is a policymaker.
And direct and
address whatever concerns
issues
that he has.
Okay, very good point.
So something remarkable happened this week that I thought was quite interesting from a Zimbabwean perspective. You had the current president of Syria in the White House, sometime earlier this week. And just to give you some context, this man, before he became president, was considered by the Americans to be a terrorist, and he had a US $10 million bounty on his head. And he actually met Trump for the first time when Trump visited the Middle East earlier in the year, and he's since been invited to the White House and spent some time there. And the Trump administration has suspended sanctions against Syria for the next 180 days. So I think that you've got in the Trump administration an American government that is willing to that's not given to pontificating and lecturing people or countries about how to manage their affairs. They're very commercial and transactional, and I think there's an opportunity for Zimbabwe to take advantage of that. The mood in Washington these days to do deals. It's not a given that it will always be this way, and I think while the window of opportunity is open, we should be quite aggressive in engaging with them and seeing what can be done. I mean, they are basically 24% of global GDP. They are 50% of global capital markets. There's a world of the universe of money that we can unlock if we are doing deals with Americans will definitely move the needle from a Zimbabwean perspective. And I think we've got an opportunity to do so.
Okay, on those.
Let me make one point for the capital markets. I would say, to the authorities, kudos for bringing on board Dangote and his group. I think maybe as another...
The authorities, but there were certain individuals that were...
it's the Pomben Fanfare happened at State House. It didn't go to. It wasn't at someone's house. So yeah.
Credit where credit is due.
Yeah. So maybe they're working for the authorities. But my issue is around, okay, let's complete this cycle and also do good to the other investors. Old Michko, they've been here 100 years. Surely the continued suspension on the stock exchange is actually unreasonable. You want to be able to say, we've got all these players that have been here for these 100 years. That's not the best way of rewarding an investor who has been with you through thick and thin. Other groups have already left because they feel that it's very difficult to operate in Zimbabwe. So let's do good by them as well. And even the local investors that we have, whether it's an Insco, Econet, or the other companies that have really stayed around.
Delta as a tax
issue and
that everybody knows exactly what was happening
we can't
during that period, but they're being penalized.
Yeah, we can't be harassing and bullying these big players, because at the end of the day, it will really negate whatever efforts that they're trying to do of attracting investors. Because these guys are not stupid, the Dangotes and all. So they would do their own research and start asking questions around how come they don't seem to have good relations with all these guys who've been there the longest. What are the chances that 5 years, 10 years down the line, they'll come after us?
Well, they'll believe that they're exceptional.
Ranga should just take the win. Just take the win, man.
On that note, thank you very much for joining us. It's great to be back. Great to have Coca-Cola with an original taste. I must say, this was great. This was fantastic. And thank you very much for Coke for sponsoring. And thank you very much for joining us in this episode of Friday Drinks. I hope that you had as much fun as we did. Otherwise, cheers.
Cheers.
I was hoping just to get in a hello, but Daniel beat me to it. You know what? He caught the dub, but little did the boy know he was about to catch an L.
Dibs!